2010, the Mull of Kintyre independent review was carried out and the findings were fully accepted. The review did not find new evidence to suggest mechanical failure, and no safety issues with the Chinook Mark II were raised in the report. This weekend, the families have formed the Chinook Justice Campaign. But justice may never come.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 11 o'clock. You're with GB News and our top story tonight. 2 boys have become the youngest convicted murderers in Britain since the killing of James Bulger in 1993. The 12-year-olds were found guilty of murdering a man with a machete in a Wolverhampton park last year. They stabbed 19-year-old Sean Cesarhai in November in an unprovoked attack. The jury's decision to convict both the boys was unanimous. His parents have said they'll never recover from the loss of their son. In election news today, the Prime Minister said he never considered quitting despite heavy criticism over his early departure from D-Day commemorations in Normandy last week. It comes after the Prime Minister kept a low profile over the weekend, avoiding questions from reporters as rumours circulated he may step down. He's now vowing he won't stop fighting for the future of the country. And Labour is promising to deliver free breakfast clubs in schools as part of a new childcare plan they say will save parents over £400 a year. They're also claiming it'll cut almost 500,000 days of school absences. Sir Keir saying it'll help parents get back to work. And the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davey, has launched his party's manifesto with a pitch to voters based on boosting the NHS and social care. Sir Ed also said that unlike those of Labour and the Tories, their plans were fully costed, adding that more people are coming to the Liberal Democrat cause. Now, in a news story tonight, Elon Musk has threatened Apple tonight over the possibility of the tech company using OpenAI in its iPhone software. Taking to X to complain, the Tesla founder said if Apple integrates OpenAI at the OS level, then Apple devices will be banned at my companies. That is an unacceptable security violation, he said. His comments followed a presentation by Apple today when it said that customers would have access to OpenAI's ChatGPT chatbot through the Siri digital assistant. Apple plans to roll out the capabilities as part of a suite of new AI features later this year. And lastly, tributes continue to come in after the death of TV nutritionist Dr. Michael Mosley. TV scientist Professor Brian Cox took to X to say that Dr. Mosley was a genuinely lovely man. The former Labour politician, Tom Watson, said it's hard to describe how upset I am by this. And pop star Midjour said the news was so sad. Police in Greece say 67-year-old Dr. Mosley died from natural causes after his body was found following a 4-day search on the island of Symi. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Time now for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Tuesday's newspapers with 3 comedians. I don't know whether that was a pun on 2 and 3. I'm Simon Evans. Tonight I'm joined by a man. I'm Simon Evans every night. Tonight I'm joined by a man who identifies as a bit of crumpet. That's Josh Howie, looking very smooth. And a man who doesn't go anywhere near crumpet. It's all avocado and boiled chicken for him. That's Nick Dixon.
I literally said one thing about my diet. It's got into the auto
It's
cue
got
on
into the
national
teleprompt.
TV.
How has that
10 minutes
happened?
later. That's unbelievable.
It's like a TV equivalent of Alexa in the corner of the room. You're starting to get little ads for them.
Yeah,
boiled
start
fish.
spreading misinformation on purpose.
So we have some headlines to have a look at. The Daily Mail kick us off. Britain's 12-year-old machete murderers. Very disturbing story. And poor old Michael Mosley at the top there, The Times. Tories offer lower taxes and help for first-time buyers. Could be too late. There's Bill Nye attending a memorial for Martin Amis. Guardian, Tory right plans to give Sunak's set of demands if manifesto falls flat. And a couple of British footballers. The Express, up the workers. PM promises 2p cut in national insurance. The Metro have red alert. Yep. And finally, the Daily Star. Here we go for Euros, presumably to Germany. Those were your front pages. So we will start with Tuesday's Daily Mail, Josh.
Yeah, Britain's 12-year-old machete murderers, and there's not really much sort of insight you can add to this story. It's two 12-year-olds killed this 19-year-old. He was over here, I believe, from the Caribbean to get a surgery, eye cataract surgery that wasn't provided where he lived, and he was here for a month. And
so was he, sorry if this is a trivial detail or could be meaningful, was he blind?
No, I don't think he was blind. He was just, I think he just had issues with his eyesight.
OK.
And he was here, I think, for a month, and this terrible tragedy happened. I don't know anything about... There's a photo of one of them, sort of dressed in the uniform of scum.
Machete murderers everywhere.
Yeah,
so it's a sort of nasty kind of LARPing type thing. Is that the suggestion then? They've kind of got this idea of like what it would be like to be...
No, I think they're just evil little...
Yeah, scroats.
Yeah. They were known to have knives and a machete. People knew they had this, but it's weird that no one did anything. This was last November in Wolverhampton. They were known to sort of go around with them. So I don't know why nothing happened earlier.
They weren't part of a drug gang or... Because the machete murders are often sort of gangland killings, aren't they? But this is just...
Yes, just random evil.
Oh, well, thoughts and prayers, obviously. The Guardian, Nick?
Yeah, The Guardian has Tory right plans to give Sunak set of demands if manifesto falls flat. So they're giving it one last try. So the idea is if Sunak's amazing manifesto doesn't quite turn it around for him, Jenrick and Braverman are seeing it. I'd live that with a straight face. Jenrick and Braverman are seeing it as a chance, according to this piece, to sort of come in and with more tough measures they want, tough on the ECHR, tough on immigration, tax changes that they want. Whereas Sunak's going to try and head that off by being a bit tough on the ECHR, though not that tough. You know, he's already said we would not let them stop Rwanda, but he's apparently going to go slightly further with the language, according to the Telegraph, and like we definitely wouldn't let them stop it and things like that.
So, I mean, I suppose the big question, and it's been discussed earlier this evening on this channel, is whether or not this election, I mean, it is lost by all accounts anyway. I think it's something like 40-1 or against or something you can get now.
Got it, Labour.
But, but whether, in theory, such an election would be won from the centre or whether his bigger concern is to try and bring reform voters back into the fold.
Yeah, I think it's... I said this yesterday, but I think it's really it's an election for the future of the Tory party. That's what the real... any excitement is about. I mean, it's a bit ridiculous. He's saying he could still win back voters. And it's like, back from what? Yeah. Except for this is his first election.
Yeah, that's true. And he's 3 leadership elections away from an actual general election. What I mean, everyone else has also decided that he doesn't want to be ruler anymore, doesn't want to be leader anymore, wants to get out of California, that he's called an early election so he can get his kids into school. That's the kind of gossip. I mean, there's nobody in the country who thinks that he has any sort of future plan for the Tory party, is there?
No, and even if he... I mean, after the election, there's no one that would seriously think he'd stay around. No. It's just a question of whether he goes now or in a few weeks.
I have heard of people saying, you know, he could leave. He could actually resign as leader. I mean, that seems absolutely extraordinary. I
thought maybe Cameron would come in. When I watched all those pictures of Cameron dominating the D-Day celebration, maybe I'll parachute Cameron in.
That would be such an extraordinary kind of, like, full circle. It would be a great 5-act drama.
Would you rule out that Cameron being next leader? I wouldn't.
I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't have him as the favourite or even the second or third. I think at the moment it's Penny and Kemi, isn't it? And then possibly Farage. Of course, there's always that kind of...
There's a technicality whether Cameron's allowed to do it or something, but he'll find a way.
Well, the last time, I mean, we had a foreign secretary in the Lords before. That was Carrington, who resigned over the Falklands invasion. That was the last one before Cameron. I don't know when the last time we had a prime minister in the Lords.
I just can't believe Sunak even brought him back. It was just ridiculous.
kind of
Madness.
For me, he's one of the worst prime ministers we've ever had, but let's not get into it.
Who, Sunak?
No, Cameron.
Cameron, OK. Well, I mean, I think he was pretty good, except for the one terrible miscalculation that he made from his own point of view.
Austerity as well, arguably.
I never thought I'd say this, but I agree with Josh.
Although not like below the waterline, yeah. Somebody I saw, I went to some people talking today, and they pointed out that if he were to win this time, the Tories, I mean, obviously they're not going, but if they were to win, that would be the 5th election in a row as well. And that is, I think, would be unheard of since the early 19th century, that any party had won. So it was always going to be an extraordinarily. But having said that,
got rid of the guy that won all the seats.
Yeah, and from such a huge majority. So anyway, moving on. There's nothing else on the Guardian you want to mention?
Not really.
No. OK. The front cover of the Times, Josh.
Tories offer lower taxes and help for home buyers. And it's always a bit strange when the party that's in power sort of offers this stuff.
Yeah.
You're just like, why weren't you doing it?
You had 14 years.
Yeah, why were you not building more houses? Why weren't you, as they say here, cancelling the stamp duty for first-time buyers?
Just noticed how much you look like Bill Nye. Oh, it's gone.
Oh, really?
It's like it's appropriate. You're on the front bench.
In the background. So all of these, lowering taxes. Well, taxes have been put up under your government. So
yeah. And also, can I say, help for home buyers. There's a very easy way to provide help for home buyers. Get out of the way of house builders. Just like stop making it so difficult to get planning permission. Just allow people to plan whole new towns easily. But every time they instead kind of come in with like financial boosts, will pay the first 5% of your mortgage, it doesn't help home buyers. It distorts the housing market, and somebody somewhere, some financialising interest picking.
Cut red tape.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you've got immigration, you've got the sort of worrying about the newts or whatever whenever you're trying to build anything. Yep. Then you've got the fact that you've got a lot of older voters voting Tory, NIMBY-type voters. Yeah. There's any number of reasons why it didn't happen. But as you say, it does look absurd trying to do it at the last minute. Well,
it has for decades now, and I'm among them. But, the only, thing we have left to cling to is that the unearned worth tied up in our equity.
But there's an interesting story which goes beyond the immediate politics that we're going through at the moment, which is about how there was this diet plan put forward about 5 years ago in the Lancet Journal. Yeah. And the idea was it was called a planetary health diet. So it was meant to be good for the environment, good for individuals. It was basically lots of nuts. It wasn't like not going vegetarian. It was like eating just a little bit less meat and eggs. Okay. And the people who have been on the diet and adhering to it are living a third less likely to die of early disease. So it shows that
good diet.
This could be a win-win situation here.
Sounds like propaganda.
It's immediately come in. Michael Mosley barely cold. And somebody stepped in. But that is interesting. I will say nuts are fantastic, but it's so Moorish. You have to lock them away.
So many people can't eat them. To various degrees. Well, some people
peanuts,
die.
There's a peanut allergy. Peanuts are not technically a nut, they're a pea.
I see.
They're nut peas.
Lots of people can't eat nuts and beans. This thing's saying just eat loads of nuts and beans. It doesn't work for a lot of people. No. Meat is still the king.
Oh, yeah, meat's fantastic. But, that is a reality. A lot of people now have trouble with it. It's probably better they eat nuts than just kale, I think. I don't know. Is that a medium ground?
No, nuts is very masculine.
Yeah. Anyway, finally, the Daily Star, Nick.
Yeah, the Star of Ere We Go for Euros, which is a pun, as you said, because it's in Germany. I can't believe it's crept up me. It's the 14th of June. It's I don't feel prepared. I don't feel ready.
No.
But I suppose we'll all get into it when it starts. And the sort of amusing irony that the Star is noting is that even the Germans want England to win, which might be putting it a bit strongly, but the point is they love Harry Kane now because he's the star of Bayern Munich.
Ah, OK.
So that's a spanner in the works.
And he does have the look, to be fair, as well, doesn't he?
Right, he could fit in. He could play for either. Yeah. Maybe you can take a few. Maybe if we could swap the penalties, that'd be nice at the end.
Well, you want to be very careful, of course. That ended the career of more than one talented and promising comedian. But the penalties in the Euros. We've had two good competitions in a row, haven't we? I don't really follow football. We've been in two finals, or a semi-final and a final. We went out in the semis
we got
to the penalties.
and
that was in the Euros, and then final of the World Cup.
Defer to my
We
football
did get to the final.
expert.
It's really hard for me to remember.
We were in the
ones-
finals of the Euros.
Yeah,
that was it. Yeah,
and we lost the penalty.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to remember recent ones. If you ask me about Italia '90, I'm like, top
Yeah,
scorer,
yeah,
Toto
yeah.
Schillaci. I'm
Have a word,
reeling
boss.
off stats. But then the closer they get, the more of a blur they become.
All played out. Did you ever read that great book about it?
If you want to talk about what's happening in Batman this week, I can fill
Well,
you.
that's taken us up to the break, sadly. That's the front pages dealt with. Coming up, we have Lib Dem manifesto wibble. We have more aftershocks from Europe's rightward lurch and a bit of vaccine red meat for Nick. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance,
This
John.
is Zurich,
And
yeah.
their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about,
Yeah.
they say dizzy spells equates to a
Well,
brain
yeah,
tumour, which
yeah.
there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
And you were expecting £25,000.
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because
Yeah.
you've got a critical
Yeah,
illness.
critical
Clearly,
illness, yeah.
it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.
Michelle, you've got a lovely, poorly husband, and you're also worrying about paying the bills and what the future holds.
Yeah.
What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children,
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in
Yeah,
the
it's
ocean
nothing.
for a company like Zurich.
Yeah, because I
Infuriating.
think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich said, we're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Rendler's family are experiencing. You're terminally ill.
Yeah, I know.
And they're calling that difficult circumstances.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
All sides.
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, still joined by Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. We kick off this section, Josh, unusually for us, so early in the programme, with the funny pages, specifically the Lib Dem manifesto in the Mail.
Here we go. US-style cannabis shops, return of EU freedom of movement, free social care and a $9.4 billion tax raid on bankers and the super rich. Ed Davey launches Lib Dem election manifesto before heading off to ride a roller coaster, which he's now famous for doing these ridiculous stunts.
Yeah.
This is the first manifesto from a major party, and they've picked out some sort of highlights there. What they've left off that list is the recognition in law of non-binary, which is a made-up identity, essentially, and as I said online earlier, but you might as well recognise unicorns or whatnot.
But that does feel like that's quite central to Lib Dem.
Well, I was going to give a little hot take here in that, and I believe I have some insight. But last election, 2019, I was very heavily campaigning for the Lib Dems as a member because I was trying to get Labour out in my area, the anti-Semitism. So I was all in on them. hanging out a little bit with Lynn Featherstone, who was the former MP in that area, who had been the originator of the same-sex marriage bill, even under the coalition. And that was really their sort of pride and joy of the coalition, what the Lib Dems feel like they achieved. She pushed that through. I think, this is just a personal theory, that she's obviously very proud of that, kept on going on about it. I think that a lot of this stuff is her and the rest of the party thinking wrongly that the TQIA plus is the next step in that thing, when it's not. It's a totally separate thing. So I think that's why they've doubled down on it. They're meant to be the sensible party, and it makes them look incredibly stupid.
What do you think about these other measures, Nick?
Well, the big one, and it says it's buried 4 pages from the end, is that they want to go back into the EU single market. Yeah. They've always been very pro-rejoin, so they're going to alienate people with the policy Josh was just talking about. But the kind of voter they're probably looking at maybe doesn't care. It's a sort of somebody who might vote Labour, who wants to rejoin the EU, and they'll vote Lib Dem strategically in certain areas. But they've got various things in there, haven't they? They've got something about the military that's not mentioned.
Do you not think
free social care?
It's quite interesting. I mean, I don't. As a throw of the dice, I can understand why the Lib Dems would go, we're the only party that would look at rejoining the EU, because there's probably like a sizable constituency for that. But it is quite funny. It's come out literally the day after the EU has lurched so far to the right.
Or Europe, anyway. Yeah, exactly. That is the amusing irony of it. But yeah.
But the question is, for me, is like, what impact are they really going to have? First of all, they're going to be fighting blue wall seats. That's going to affect the Tory vote. And also, is it, the manifesto really is like, can it nudge the other parties one way or the other? Yeah. Because obviously none of this stuff's really going to happen.
I mean, Ed Davey as a personality, the major taint on him is the post office scandal, I suppose. But other than that, he doesn't strike me as quite as...
I thought you were going to say the women clearly having a penis. That's the other thing.
No, I think actually, like, he's no worse than Starmer on that. That's just like a virus that's gone through 90% of humanity lately. Even Penny Mordaunt.
He has a pretty incredible story. His dad died when he was 4. His mother had
seems
cancer.
like a more authentic, conceivable than some of the ones they've had, of late. That strange
He's
woman.
no Paddy Ashton. The one thing I will say, it's impressive he goes around and gets on all these roller coasters. That's the bit I really couldn't do. To do the speeches, you've got to jump on a roller coaster and
whitewater rafting,
on a lilo and you.
Anyway, it's going to escalate.
The Times now, Nick. We have 2 reasons why the gains of the hard right this weekend make Europe an attractive holiday proposition this summer.
Oh yeah, this is Euro falls to a 2-year low against pound as EU reels from elections. So as you alluded to there, all these elections in Europe, changes happening, and of course change and instability, never great for markets. But there's a specific thing which is investors are concerned about: Le Pen's interventionist economic policies. That's what it says here in the Times. It is the Times. But so yeah, they're worried about what this will mean for the future of the euro. It's great that we're not in the euro, of course, so we can celebrate that once again.
I always find that, I mean, it's not unfamiliar, but EU reels from elections as if it's an exterior, as if it's an external force. It's as if it's something that has happened to it. It's a manifestation of people within the EU demonstrating their dissatisfaction with existing...
I mean, as it says here, the central Liberal and Socialist parties still have the majority within it, but it's just the potential for the future, and obviously people invest in markets.
It's 1931, basically. We're not at 33 yet.
Exactly. But it's also interesting how the Times article says here, gains made by the populist right. It's interesting, the Times say the populist right, as opposed to the far right, which would be in The Guardian.
Yes. Well, that is the thing, isn't it? It's where you put the centre and then everyone frames it around that. You're absolutely right.
It's more and more silly when they're saying far right, when it's running all of Europe. I mean, is Hitler back? It's people like Meloni, who really pretty moderate. She's actually betrayed people on the immigration thing. Le Pen, I don't think she's far right. And she's actually got that young guy as the front of the party anyway. Who else is there? There's a Spanish guy we're going to get onto, but none of them are far right.
I suppose what happens is, again, the famous phrase...
well, there's the IFD, some people say are far right.
But the famous thing about, you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose, and there is also, I think, the far right has a particular tendency towards that, doesn't it, in terms of, anti... I mean, Trump arguably did that. There was a lot of talk about walls and what have you, and deportations. Very little.
Yeah, Meloni did it, and she talked about G.K. Chesterton and the family and stuff. Yes. And she gets into just another politician.
Yeah. Over to Spain now, in fact, Josh, with the Telegraph. It sounds like they found their Javier Milei or possibly their Chichiolina.
Yes, what Nick was alluding to, yes. Spanish influencer with no manifesto. He wins 800,000 votes and an EU seat. Actually, I think he's got 3 EU seats. Yeah, he used to be part of the Lib Dems, so this is the first time Lib Dems have won something for a while, technically, whilst he was living in Leeds. But yeah, he's a maverick influencer, and they sort of compare him to Trump because they say he's accusing Spain of being run by criminals, the corrupt and paedophile rapists. So that's a bit Trumpian. But actually, he seems a bit more Farage in that he's also talking about... he refers to Belgium as a failed state of Islamists, imported prostitution from people smugglers and disgusting food. Right. So he's not someone who's just going to hold back. He's doing the pros. Yeah. But the question is, of course, he's doing the poetry, but I don't know what prose he has, and he doesn't know what prose he has because he's just kind of he's got in now and he doesn't.
I mean, Farage didn't really have a manifesto when he got into the EU, did he? He was just a thorn in their side. He just stood up and accused them of being corrupt and time wasting and
Yeah, well, that's what's so interesting about it, is that people are still voting for these people in lieu of an actual manifesto. I mean, look at Reform now. They've done a press conference today. They're getting it together. But, you know, these people don't really have the infrastructure, the sophistication, or even the policies. No. But people are so sick of the progressive, liberal, global elite, call it whatever you want. It's the excesses and just failures of it. They're so sick of it. I mean, you literally call your party, as this guy has, the party is over. you're a YouTuber or something. And, and you can win because the disgust is so great. And so this is why we're heading for big changes. All these changes in Europe, they're not, like you say, they're not the big change, but they're just hints. And they might be neutralised, but they're hints that the whole thing's falling apart.
But it's a technological change as well. There's now the YouTube in Cyprus. He's got through, and there's is it the medium as much as the message here?
I'd be worried that all the politicians just get on TikTok and keep their same policies. Because it says here, they must modernise and listen to the people, someone said. But listening to people is the key part, more than being on TikTok.
But the problem is that TikTokers and YouTubers, they listen to algorithm. Yeah. And then that's...
Well, we had that with Trump. I mean, Trump in 2016 was a Twitter election. You know, that wouldn't have happened without Twitter.
What do you think of the suggestion that Macron has... he's called this election now, and some people are saying that, well, I think it's, in fact, the consensus that he's doing so because he thinks Marine Le Pen's... Was it not called the Front National anymore, is it? Is it called something else? Anyway, something else for us. Reform France?
National Rally.
National Rally, yeah. He thinks that once they're inside government, they'll be exposed as having no manifesto, no policies, no plans, no structure, no competence. But as long as they're outside and able to just barrack, they will continue to gain in popularity.
And he'll have 2 years still as leader until the presidential elections.
Yeah, which is probably a very sensible gamble. But that feels like this is the sort of thing that's happening on this front as well. These people will get into the EU now and then.
But there's the other idea. People tend to use the EU vote as a protest vote. Yeah. And when it comes down to running their country, they tend to sort of coalesce together against those parties.
That's true. And it's odd in that regard, isn't it? Because traditionally in this country as well, we always use by-elections, council elections and so on as a protest vote. And the problem with the EU was it was perceived to be too powerful. It essentially neutered and castrated our government, our parliament. And yet, at the same time, to use that as a protest vote...
I guess it's less immediate.
Yeah. Well, here's a little twofer in the Independent, Nick, that even the most vaccine-hesitant of old geezers must surely see as a bargain.
Yeah, this is a combined COVID and flu vaccine could be approved for use on NHS by next year. It's quite fascinating because you'll be sort of immune to a virus and a political phenomenon. They're just putting the two things together. So it's new data from clinical trials held by COVID vaccine creator Moderna suggests combined jabs provoke a higher immune response than separate single jabs. So it doesn't say if you have to get multiple boosters. I mean, to me, I skim it anyway because I'm not taking these things anyway. No. Never would.
I think anyone over a certain... My wife tried to get me to take the flu vaccine, purely anecdotal, but the one time I took it, I felt ill afterwards. And statistically, that is apparently very rare, or maybe even... But I don't like it. I don't think it's...
For people in their late 60s who might still be at risk, but the thing that frustrates me is this article in The Independent here is they talk about, like, 1,300 people are filled right now with suspected COVID patients, and they're going it's like hospitalised with COVID. It's like hospitalised from COVID. Can we please? This is years ago now. Can we stop playing these silly little word games and talk about who is actually there because COVID has brought them down, as opposed to they just happen to have COVID and they're 20 years old.
Fell down the stairs with COVID.
Exactly. Yes.
I was talking to somebody earlier this evening who's had whooping cough.
That's back, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was gone decades ago. And you're not supposed to get vaccinated against that at a birth or something, aren't you?
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I was on the headlines a few weeks ago. Everything's back, Simon.
They're all back.
So it's on trend.
The old man is back again. Scott Walker. Josh, statistical survey from the Runnymede Trust in The Guardian. Let's hear it anyway.
The stuff is valid. It's just what you're going to take from it. Police more than 6 times more likely to strip search black children. And this is also in the same study that shows that police forces in England and Wales are 10 times more likely to search black people. Now,
10 times more likely to search them and 6 times more likely to strip search.
Strip search, yes.
Yeah, which is a significant escalation, it has to be said.
Yeah, so the question is then you've got the police kind of saying that they're trying to justify every time that they do it, and one of the policies that was looked at was that everything had to be put up to a senior officer or an inspector to do it, which sounds very sort of...
Before you get the strip, you need a specific permission.
Yeah, and a strip could also just be like a sort of a pat, not necessarily a full body tap down, but this is all because of that 15-year-old schoolgirl who was strip searched.
Years ago, though, wasn't it?
I don't think so. It was like two years ago, maybe 1 year, 1 or 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it was pretty shocking.
It was brutal, horrible. I mean, the big elephant in the room is how does this map onto the statistics of how often they find weapons,
Well,
right?
exactly. And that's what's left out, unless I've missed it, that's what's left out of the article. So without that, it's the per capita question. So the whole thing is meaningless. I mean, of course it's unpleasant to be targeted with a search, but it's left out. Yes, it's called, someone here, Chief Executive of the Runnymede Trust says strip searching is invasive, etc. And it's been racialised disproportionately, but we don't know from the article if it is disproportionate because we don't have the proportions.
In the same way that, for instance, if it were to emerge that 10 times more young men are searched than young women, I think very few people would say, well, that's outrageous, you should, And
the other thing is it's intended to save black kids' lives as well.
Yeah, including young black lives in particular. That was a very shocking statistic that emerged in the aftermath of the racial reckoning in America in 2020, the absolute spiking of black homicides, right? Of black victims,
And we've seen it over here, actually. There's been a decrease in stop and search, and we've seen knife crime go up.
Yeah. I think most parents certainly would probably take those odds, would they? You know what I mean? Like the chance that your child might be stopped and searched, but less likely to get stabbed. I don't know, though. Luckily, I live in Hove. That is it for part 2. Coming up, we have Welsh mining retroactive diversity initiatives and BPHR overreach and the war reconsidered. See you in a couple of minutes.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Still some showers around during the next 24 hours, but also a few clear spells and under starry skies. Tonight, temperatures will fall. It's going to be a chilly one for June. We've got this northerly airflow, and within those northerly winds, we've still got some showers, especially for the north and the east coast. 1 or 2 inland elsewhere, but many of the inland showers will ease overnight, leading to plenty of clear spells, especially in the south and the west, where we've got clear spells, temperatures dipping to 7 or 8 Celsius generally, but a little lower than that in some sheltered spots, and as a result, the potential for a grass frost first thing in 1 or 2 places. However, despite the early June chill in the air, it's going to be a bright start to the day on Tuesday. Plenty of sunshine for southern England, parts of Wales as well in between the showers. Showers also affecting parts of Northern Ireland, especially towards the west, but plenty of bright weather away from those showers. And again, thicker cloud further north. A few showers running into the north of Scotland and the North Sea coast of England. But during the morning, what we'll see is the cloud build more generally across the UK, and showers will again develop fairly widely. You could get a shower just about anywhere, but the most likely areas for frequent showers will be northern, central and eastern England, where those showers will be heavy at times. It's going to feel cool here as well, 12 or 13 Celsius on that North Sea coast, but where we've got mostly dry weather towards the southwest, 17 or 18 Celsius, not feeling too chilly. Into Wednesday morning, again, a cool start to the day. Plenty of bright weather first thing. A few more showers develop across eastern England. Elsewhere, it stays mostly dry as a ridge of high pressure builds in. That leads to a settled end to the day on Wednesday, but it's only ahead of the next batch of rain moving in for Thursday and Friday.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Okay.
Welcome back to Headliners. Telegraph now, Nick, and dare I say it, this latest diversity initiative in the history of Welsh mining really is the pits.
It is indeed. It's Wales tells its National Coal Museum to find historical injustices to teach. Find them. Find me them now. There aren't any. Find them. It's kind of a ridiculous Batman villain of wokeness. Find them. So it's absurd. So this is the Big Pit National Coal Museum, and they want a decolonised view that recognises historical injustice, all the usual rubbish we're used to seeing now. And it wants them to tell the stories through the lens of black, Asian and minority ethnic people's experiences in Wales. And it says find material with links to ethnic minority history, even if it's not obvious. It literally says, such connections may not be obvious, is one quote. And the other quote is, the new curriculum is not based solely on facts. So facts are out. Just find me anything about a black miner if you can in Wales.
And the insane thing is there's plenty of social injustice in mining. I mean, it was absolutely brutal along class lines.
Exploitation.
You know? Yeah, I mean, it's all there. There's just the element of race that's missing.
Well, no, I mean, why didn't they bring sort of blackface into it?
Yeah.
That works.
Interrogating your whiteness.
Yeah,
you've got to find it.
Coming out of the pit, covered in soot.
I watched a thing a couple of days ago. You know, it was the anniversary of 1984 and being published, and so there was a documentary about Orwell. And before that, one of the things he did was go down the pits. I think it was in Durham he went down, or maybe it was on the road to Wigan Pier or one of those things. He spent a few hours, and his description of it is really extraordinarily vivid about just how unbelievably.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was incredibly grim.
Yeah.
But this is a part of a policy, part of the Labour devolved government there that have pushed through. It's like, yes, if it's relevant, of course this is interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But don't just force it into a.
Well, I mean, you could even do, if you wanted to, conceivably create a museum of mining around the world. Let's look at open-cast silver mining in Peru. Let's look at, coal mining in Pennsylvania, which very possibly used people of colour. I don't know, but you could do that, right? You could create who were the different miners around the world. I remember Richard Burton talking about mining because his father was a coal miner in South Wales. And apparently it's the same seam runs under the Atlantic and re-emerges in his mind in America. And they're American and Welsh miners, have a kind of they have a kind of...
Suck it up!
What you just said then is far more interesting than anything that will be in this, just immediately.
They should just get Richard Burton's voice as AI to do it.
Yeah. So you're not gonna boycott the Big Pit Museum?
I already am.
Sounds like a good burger, though. Independent now, Josh. This headline was going so well until on his offer.
Yes. So Reform candidate says UK should have taken Hitler up on his offer of neutrality instead of fighting Nazis. And this is a candidate for the Reform Party, this guy called Ian Gribbin, who's standing in. It's not just that. There's a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of arguably quite misogynist stuff. But what's not just shocking for me apart from what he's said, is also the response of the Reform Party, which is to kind of try and pass it off as just kind of comments that had some truth to them. He was also dissing Churchill, and it's just like, look, we get it. There's a snap election. Lots of parties, and the Greens included, have put forward some people who weren't given the proper due checks. So just own up, put your hand up, and then.
You think he should be excluded for that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Because everything he said there, Peter Hitchens has said.
Yeah. It's perfectly.
For instance, it's a mainstream view that in the 30s it was also, as he says himself, the mainstream view in the British establishment. Lord Hastings,
but he's not talking about in the 30s.
Was literally seconds away from being Churchill's.
But that was in the 30s before the rise of Hitler. Now, it did happen, and arguably it was one of the UK's greatest moments.
Or arguably it was a catastrophe which led to vastly more millions of deaths.
Yeah, I don't think stopping Nazis. I don't think it's a
catastrophe. To the sensationalist context, as you say, it's a normal historical view.
Yeah.
Just watch Darkest Hour. The establishment were all of that opinion. Yeah. Obviously, the Prime Minister was of that opinion until replaced by Churchill.
Yeah.
So it's not that controversial.
But it's back then.
And the idea is that Churchill destroyed the British Empire and gave it over to America unnecessarily. It's not that controversial.
No.
They're trying to make it sound like it is.
He's not saying the Nazis were a good thing and we should have just let them run riot. It's quite a different proposition than that.
Well, and the other thing on women, it's a tongue-in-cheek, as he says, article. I mean, he says men pay 80% of tax, women spend 80% of tax revenue. On aggregate, as a group, you take from society. Less complaining, please, from the sponging gender. Yeah. Is that serious? It's a kind of a Clarkson-esque piece.
He's clearly taking the mic.
He's also talking about Putin saying he's shown the maturity we can only dream of.
But that was before the invasion. This is the thing. They take things out of context and out of time. It's a similar thing. I'm not saying exactly the same, but I remember, and you can take a view as to whether or not it was unforgivable either way, but the most notorious of Donald Trump's recorded, overheard, in the Hollywood thing where you can just grab them. Yeah.
Billy Bush weekend.
That was from 10 years before he stood. Yeah. But my wife, right into the middle of his term in office, understood that to have been
recent. Yeah.
Well, within his election campaign. This is the thing I think you need to understand. This is not like he's not been on the campaign trail saying, if elected, I will.
No, but I don't think that makes any difference. Certainly with the Trump thing, like that it was 10 years or.
I think it makes a huge amount of difference. He was working for the
just shows the kind of guy he was.
Yeah, but so does everything we know about Clinton. Shows the kind of guy he was.
By the kind of activists that try and destroy people on this channel. These are the kind of people, so you have to take it with a large pinch of salt. And also, lefty parties say worse things than this. Often sometimes they shout them upon election. If we think about the Green Party, so it's
I just think I'm saying that I just think there's hypocrisy here where they've calling out. We can't call out the Green Party and various things that their people have said. No, call them out and not call this out as well.
No, they can call it out, and then Reform can go, well, I think it was a mainstream view.
They have got rid of various candidates, and they'll probably take it on a case-by-case basis, and they're weighing this one up, seeing what happens.
I don't understand this mainstream view. It was a mainstream view in the 30s. It's not a mainstream view.
No. Some historians say it's not. That's the point, isn't it? Some historians say this. It's
let me make it clear. It's not my view. I think it would have been wrong because the balance of power would have shifted. But it didn't prevent, the horrific. I mean, it was the bloodiest war in history by a long measure. All the millions of Jews that died in the camps, none of that would have been, none of that was prevented by Britain. So he's not saying, luckily Britain stepped in and consequently the Germans. You know what I mean? So it's a more nuanced historical position than I think is being presented either in the newspaper or you're suggesting. I don't think he's pro-Nazi.
No.
I think he's saying that Churchill is elevated to an unreasonable extent, as somebody who got it right when all the rest of the British establishment didn't.
Calling Churchill arguably the greatest Briton, abysmal. I don't know. It's not someone I want to vote for.
No, I'm not suggesting you vote for them. I'm just saying I think it's.
I don't know. I mean, if say the Green Party had put forward somebody who'd said something similar about Churchill, I think the right would be going, oh my God, look at this lefty calling Churchill abysmal and da-da-da. I'm just saying let's not be hypocrites about it. That's all.
No, well, I agree. Let's not be hypocrites. Another plank of the woke takeover falls in the iNews now, Nick, as Thornaby FC, no less, revert to men-only teams.
Yeah, it's England star leads outrage after Thornaby FC scraps all women's teams. So it's Thornaby FC, they're in Stockton-on-Tees, and they basically looked at it and said, we can't afford to have a women's team, so something's got to give to ensure the future of the club, and that's what we're going to get rid of. And the argument against is, well, this is a successful women's team, has been winning all these things, and therefore you're evil, and you based it on gender rather than a purely sort of financial calculation. That's the claim against. But it's sort of known that women's football doesn't make much money at the club level, isn't it? But I don't know the all the ins and outs of this.
Well, no, absolutely. It is interesting how quickly women's football has become economically viable at a certain level, but I suspect at a lower level, absolutely, a lot of clubs are struggling to survive at all.
Yeah, these are not professional football players,
No.
and they're talking about it as almost like a social thing or helping with mental health. That's all great,
yeah.
But at the same time, someone has to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it seems like the club is struggling anyway with its, well, I guess you would argue would be its prime remit of why it was first created, which was men's football.
Yeah.
And it seems like they've had to drop something. Now, if someone's going to step in and pay for the necessary staff to keep the female team going, brilliant. But if you have to make cuts, I guess it's last
On the
in,
other
first
hand,
out.
some of their sponsors are now withdrawing sponsorship because
So
they
it's
dropped the
bad
women's
for-
team.
yeah, but-
Again, maybe that's why it's ended up in the papers. Maybe they're hoping somebody will pick it up. That's part 3 dispatched. Part 4 alone remains microplastics get literally everywhere and fat-shaming ballerinas. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Joint CEO at the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr. Ron Daniels. Very good to see you this morning. Why is it with sepsis we sort of hear very little about it in day-to-day life until there's either a big story or a big tragedy? Why is that? Is it common?
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
My understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently.
So what do we do?
If you're concerned something is devastatingly wrong, there are 6 key symptoms to look for, and they spell the word sepsis. S for slurred speech or confusion. E for extreme pain in the muscles or joints. P for passing no urine, no water in a day. S for severe breathlessness. I for it feels like I'm going to die, and people really do say that. And then the final S for skin that's mottled or discoloured or very pale. Any one of those 6 in the context of infection, it's go straight to A&E.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides.
As you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners for what I believe is our final section. Josh, worrying news now about microplastics and semen, although I suppose it would be even worse the other way round. If there was semen in the microplastics.
I think this way around is pretty bad as well.
This is bad. I don't know. Maybe this is the worst way, yeah.
Yeah, we've covered this before. Microplastics found in every human semen sample tested in study. There's 40 semen samples. Just see how many times I could say semen samples. Yeah. Semen samples says...
He sounds like, wasn't he in...
It's actually a banned word, so I'd like to apologise for Josh saying semen.
No, wasn't he a character in Pugwash?
No,
Captain Pugwash.
Semen samples says...
Able semen samples.
Anyway, well, as it was... But there's a few things interesting. First of all, they did it on healthy men undergoing a premarital health assessment in China.
Wow.
So I didn't know they had a premarital health assessment in China. That's something that I don't know what they test. They test their semen samples. And the other thing is that is this the end of humanity? Radiation.
That's the second point, is it?
That's
still needs to be number one.
I just thought the first one was quite interesting, but just in case, I suppose. And they're talking about
suppose
this.
The question in the first one is it optional or is it become a society-wide thing? Yeah.
Yes. It sounds like it's not optional.
If you're a particularly possessive father, I don't want you marrying any young man who's got plastic in
your... But it's leading possibly to sperm deformities, also to lack of viable sperm count.
Yeah.
So, and it seems to be accumulative. So there are issues. I mean, like I said, is this going to be the end of humanity?
And where is it coming? It's not just coming from drinking, like, water.
So they say even breathing.
Polystyrene, packaging, it's just in everything. You plastic bags. It's kind of ruined my pure blood thing as well if I'm full of microplastics. But you know what? I saw this a meme there. You know that Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at each other?
Yes.
It was 3 Spider-Mans pointing at each other, and it was like my father full of lead, my grandfather full of asbestos, me full of microplastics. So every generation, you get full of some rubbish that ruins it.
That is absolutely true.
But our reproductive abilities go down.
Lead... Mainly deleterious to IQ, I think. What was the other one?
I don't know, my grandfather was on
the other one, your grandfather.
You had too much lead. Asbestos.
That's why they... Asbestos, that was your lungs, wasn't it? Whereas microplastics... It definitely interferes with sperm count, but does it lower testosterone as well as in terms of your general feeling of... being
manliness.
Masculine.
No, it doesn't say anything about that.
Because I know people that, you know, on that kind of bro science stuff, people say don't handle receipts, because that's one of the things it comes off, right? Receipts, you know, that kind of sticky paper. Yeah, there's a kind of chemical on there that people think you shouldn't get onto your skin, that will get into you and lower your testosterone.
I love playing with receipts.
There's a guy called Dr. Yusuf Smith, I think, who is quite a good... He's not actually like a gym bro. He actually creates... online programs that allow gym bros to sell their services. So he's like a meta bro. But he did a thing, it was very interesting, where he tried to avoid all these, what do they call them?
Endocrine disruptors.
Yeah, exactly. For a fortnight. He was like, oh, my God, there are so many. Yeah, it was just like you dig down and there's like...
It's a neurosis I don't want to give myself. I've already got so many.
Thank goodness I've reproduced already. Nick, times now, yet another field, literally a field where being a psycho has certain advantages.
Yes, a bit like comedy. Malevolent traits could be key to athletic success, experts say. They looked at 300 athletes, including swimmers, triathletes, cyclists, and they found that a lot of them are high in dark triad traits, which you'll probably know is narcissism, psychopathy, Machiavellianism. I've given the dark triad test to women on dates as a fun... You sell it as fun, you find out so much. It's quite fascinating.
Before I ordered the cocktails.
The first date is the time. And I came out, by the way, as lighter than average. Josh will be surprised, but the nation won't be. But some of these women, very dark. And they're high in... Anyway, and the point is, athletes can actually help them because these characteristics that are considered malevolent in social settings might help them be a winner in athletics. And they're already more likely to think of themselves as superior, apparently. So it's just kind of very in keeping. Although there's a problem if the coach also has these traits and then he doesn't get on well with the athlete, they both have them.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like how psychopaths can do well in business and stuff, as John Ronson proved in the psychopath test, or suggested improved.
Well, ultimately, it was a great book, but ultimately he came to the conclusion it's a very murky territory, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
It's a very almost...
But if you've seen the Michael Jordan documentary, it's brilliant. It follows their season. It's like their 5th season.
He's not a psycho, right?
Well, no, he is.
Is he?
Yeah, he's got all these kind of... He's got exactly these characteristics. He's incredibly driven and a bit manipulative and competitive.
Got the manipulative one.
Yeah, and he
manipulates
other players. He also manipulates himself.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting.
But I guess if you're playing a team...
Apparently he's ruthless on the football.
If you're playing a team sport at speed like basketball, you can see how understanding dynamics between people. What about talking about athletes? I mean, maybe that's just my head. So they mean team, because if you were a sprinter, would it matter? I mean, you've got to be driven and
swimmers
focused.
It's swimmers, triathletes, and cyclists. That is fairly solo, isn't it? So it's interesting.
It suggests it aids people who are doing these more solo sports.
Yeah, right.
But like I said, ruthlessness, selfishness, and manipulative behaviour. Michael Jordan was exhibiting a lot of it and seemed to sort of readily admit in some cases this was part of the reason of his success.
Wow, amazing. And also the incredibly profitable trainer deals as well, I expect.
Well, that was, I think, his mum. That's a good film as well.
Psycho Mum.
The Nike movie.
Is that called Queen Jordan or something?
No, it isn't, but they should have.
That would have been the Queen of Jordan, Sorry, Mail now. I'm trying to just got her picture in my head. She's lovely, isn't she? Mail now, Josh. Unbelievably now, they are saying ballerinas can't be obese. This is just body shaming off the scale, isn't it?
It's disgusting. Ballet director Carlos Acosta doubles down after pupils at top dance schools accused teachers of body shaming them over their weight, as he insists dancers have to watch their shape. And the reason they have to watch their shape, he says, is because poor, weak old men can't lift up big, fatty ballerinas. That's the gist of it. But it is quite interesting that they don't call it losing weight. They
say lengthen out.
They lengthen out.
They
can't say. They're not allowed to say that.
I might say lengthen.
Yeah. Have you been thinking about lengthening out?
Oh, well, that's a great note to end on. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. We have the Daily Mail, Britain's 12-year-old machete murderers. The Times, Tories offer lower taxes and help for first-time buyers. The Guardian, Tory right plans to give Sunak set of demands if manifesto falls flat. The Express, up the workers. PM promises 2p cut in national insurance. The Metro, red alert. And finally, the Daily Star, here we go for the Euros. Those were your front pages, and that's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Nick Digson. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Josh again and Leo Kearse. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you very much for your company. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Still some showers around during the next 24 hours, but also a few clear spells and under starry skies. Tonight, temperatures will fall. It's going to be a chilly one for June. We've got this northerly airflow, and within those northerly winds, we've still got some showers, especially for the north and the east coast. One or two inland elsewhere, but many of the inland showers will ease overnight, leading to plenty of clear spells, especially in the south and the west, where we've got clear spells, temperatures dipping to 7 or 8 Celsius generally, but a little lower than that in some sheltered spots, and as a result, the potential for a grass frost first thing in 1 or 2 places. However, despite the early June chill in the air, it's going to be a bright start to the day on Tuesday. Plenty of sunshine for southern England, parts of Wales as well in between the showers. Showers also affecting parts of Northern Ireland, especially towards the west, but plenty of bright weather away from those showers. And again, thicker cloud further north. A few showers running into the north of Scotland and the North Sea coast of England. But during the morning, what we'll see is the cloud build more generally across the UK, and showers will again develop fairly widely. You could get a shower just about anywhere, but the most likely areas for frequent showers will be northern, central and eastern England, where those showers will be heavy at times. It's going to feel cool here as well, 12 or 13 Celsius on that North Sea coast, but where we've got mostly dry weather towards the southwest, 17 or 18 Celsius, not feeling too chilly. Into Wednesday morning, again, a cool start to the day. Plenty of bright weather first thing. A few more showers develop across eastern England. Elsewhere, it stays mostly dry as a ridge of high pressure builds in. That leads to a settled end to the day on Wednesday, but it's only ahead of the next batch of rain moving in for Thursday and Friday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.